Judges 8:22. Then the men of Israel said to Gideon, so a man named Gideon, if you're just joining us, a man named Gideon was called by God to lead a war against the Midianites who had invaded Israel. He's kicking out an army that's invaded their country. So he just got done doing that last week in our story. So this week, all the people are appreciating what God did through Gideon. Then the men of Israel said to Gideon, rule over us, underline rule over us, you and your son and your grandson also, for you have saved us from the hand of Midian. And Gideon said to them, I will not rule over you, underline that. And my son will not rule over you. The Lord, circle the Lord, will rule over you. And Gideon said to them, let me make a request of you, that every one of you give me the earrings from his spoil. For they had all golden earrings, for they were Ishmaelites. And they answered, underline the sentence, we will willingly give them. And they spread a cloak on the ground, and every man threw in it the earrings of his spoil. And the weight of the golden earrings that he requested was 1,700 shekels of gold. Right in your Bible, that's over 40 pounds of gold. Besides the crescent ornaments and the pendants and the purple garments worn by the kings of Midian, and besides the collars that were around the necks of their camels. And Gideon made an ephod, circle ephod, of it, and he put it up in his city, in Ophrah. And all Israel whored after it, circle whored, and it became a snare, circle snare, to Gideon and his family. So Midian was subdued before the people of Israel, and they raised their heads no more. And the land had rest 40 years in the days of Gideon. Jerubbaal, the son of Joash, Jerubbaal is another name for Gideon, went and lived in his own house. Now Gideon had 70 sons, circle 70 sons. Some of you guys got family drama. That's some family drama. He had 70 sons, his own offspring, for he had many wives. Underline that phrase. He had many wives. We're going to talk about that. And his concubine, who was in Shechem, also bore him a son, and he called his name Abimelech. And Gideon, the son of Joash, died at a good old age and was buried in the tomb of Joash, his father, at Ophrah of the Abiezrites. As soon as Gideon died, the people of Israel turned again and whored after the Baals and made Baal Berith their god. And the people of Israel did not remember the Lord, circle Lord, their God, who had delivered them from the hand of all their enemies on every side. And they did not show steadfast love to the family of Jerubbaal, that is Gideon, in return for all the good that he had done to Israel. Let me ask you a question. When is the last time you made a really good decision? For many of us, we're like, I can't think of a time I actually made a good decision. If I was to ask you, hey, when's the last time you made a total train wreck of a decision? You're like, oh, that actually last night in Old Town, now that I think about it. Like for some of us, that wasn't too many hours ago when we could go, I made a super bad decision like literally last night. But when we think about like, hey, when's the last time you made a really good decision? Like a decision that blessed your life. And maybe not only blessed your life, blessed other people's lives around you. Like when's the last time you made that decision? For many of us, when we think about that, we kind of go, I can't even think of a time when I made like that good of a decision that blessed other people's lives. Well, guess what? We're going to walk through the life of Gideon here. His life's going to end today. This is the end of the story of Gideon. And it's going to start out really awesome, and it's going to end a little train wrecky. So much like our own lives, we make some really good decisions like, good job, son. And then we make some like train wrecky decisions. We go, you really screwed up, son. And that's actually going to happen to Gideon here. And it's going to actually tell us a way forward how God will bless your life if you make good decisions and how to make them. So pull your notes out if you got them. They should be in your bulletin if you got one when you walked in. Pull your notes out. Also, if you're watching online, at the top of the comments section, there's a link at the top of the comments. You click on that link and my notes will pop up. Number one is this: Gideon's decision creates blessing. Gideon's decision creates blessing. When a massive Midianite army invaded Israel, God called Gideon to lead a battle against them. That's what we've looked at the last few weeks. Not being particularly skilled or brave, God gave him a mission, then encouraged him with people and circumstances to complete it. So I talked about this last week. You were to come up with, what's your mission in life? If you were to complete this sentence, I exist to, what is that? What's your mission? Why do you live? Why do you bother living another day? Well, guess what? Your feelings will lead you astray, but mission will guide you. Mission will stabilize unstable feelings. So when TikTok is telling you to act a certain way, or Instagram's telling you to act a certain way, or Facebook makes you feel really agitated because of the elections or because of social problems or the economy or your health issues or whatever, like when you start feeling unstable and anxious and like, I don't know what to do, mission guides you. What's my mission? To honor God by being a godly man, to my wife, to my kid, whatever your mission is. So understand, ready? We talked about mission last week. God has used Gideon in a great way, in a mission to kick out the Midianites who invaded their country. That was his mission, and he pulled it off. And God's blessing his life. Recognizing God's hand was on his life, the people asked Gideon and his sons to rule as their king. Here we go. Here's a map from last week. Will you flip the clock over? Here's a map from last week. So here's a Google map. When we go to Israel, we will go right by Ophrah, where Gideon grew up. So this story isn't mythology. It actually took place in real space and time. And Israel, this is northern Israel, which is that skinny little piece to the left of the Jordan River right there. Ophrah, Gideon not only grew up there, but the Midianite army came in from the south, invaded their land, and settled in the Jezreel Valley. So they literally settled right in his backyard. God calls him to kick them out. Through a miracle of God, 150,000 Midianites either are killed or they start to try to escape. That was last week. Now, the people of Israel, especially northern Israel, are so appreciative to him, they want to make him their king. Because of what God did in his life through them. Through him, it blessed their lives. As God had made an allowance in the law, the Old Testament law, for an eventual king, their desire for a man of God to rule them was a good one. So look, Deuteronomy 17, in the law, God says this, hey, I'm going to set up this system where there's going to be a tabernacle and a priest. The priest is going to be the mediator between sinful humanity, Israel, and a perfect God. The priest is going to do that job. But I'm also going to let you have a king who's going to rule in righteousness through me. That king is going to rule Israel. So that was in the law. They didn't have one at this point, which is why this book is called Judges. They had a bunch of guys that God raised up to go to war, and then they died. And then they go to war, and God keeps raising up these judges, but they don't have a king yet. So the nation of Israel is like, dude, I see God in you. I see the hand of God on you. Why don't you be our king? Like, you're a man of God, so just be our king, because God says we can have a king. Deuteronomy chapter 17. And here's the first part of it. Here's our first principle. Acknowledge who God is using and go with them. Ready? Listen to me. Listen to what I'm saying. You are influenced. You are influenced. You are influenced. What influences you? Whoever you appreciate is who influences you. Could be a TikTok star, could be an Instagram person that you follow, could be an athlete, could be somebody that makes a lot of money. You're like, man, when I get older, I want to make $1 million. I want to be just like that person. I want to be like Elon Musk. I'm going to be like, whoever you appreciate affects your decision making. Because you'll do really stupid stuff if you see your hero doing something stupid. Or you might make really good decisions because you saw your hero go, hey, let's not do that, or let's do this, or blah, blah, blah. All of the people that you appreciate clamor for your attention. Hey, do this thing with me, do this thing. And oftentimes the majority of the influence that comes into your life comes through that piece of glass you hold in your hand. Those people out of that piece of glass go, hey, this should be important to you. Hey, this is important to me, be important, this should be important to you too. And we kind of go, okay. And we make decisions, how we dress, how we act, how we speak, where we go, things we buy, all on a piece of glass that we hold in our hand. So whoever I say, you know what, I really appreciate that person, they influence how I live. So let me break something down for you. You have godly people around you that speak into your ear hole that go, hey, let's follow Jesus together. Chances are you'll make better decisions. You got a bunch of losers around you that go, hey, let's do something stupid. You kind of go, okay, that sounds pretty good. Actually, now that I think about it. Hey, you know what? Stupid is as stupid does. You got stupid peeps around you, you're gonna be stupid. You got people that are godly trying to guide you in a godly way, like don't do that, or let's do this thing, or what. If you have godly influences, chances are you'll make godly decisions. You have ungodly people around you, chances are you're gonna do ungodly things. Why? Because the people around you influence your decisions. We're all influenced by everybody, by the media, by your friends, by a teacher, by a coach, by a pastor. And here's the key, ready? When you see a guy that has the hand of God on him, go with that guy. Like when you see people that are godly in your life, get as many godly people speaking into your life as possible. Many times we don't even have any godly friends. We don't let pastors speak into our lives. We do nothing. And we wonder why isn't God blessing my life? Like why don't I sense God in my life? Well, part of the reason is we're influenced by other ungodly things, websites we go to, people we talk to, people we chat with, whatever. And right here, one of the good things is that the people are like, dude, Gideon, I see God in you. Like God doesn't choose everybody. He chooses one guy and he chose you. Same thing with Moses. Remember when Moses led the people of Israel out of slavery in Egypt? God could have chosen 1,000,000 guys to go do that job, but he didn't. He chose one guy. He chose Moses. And the people were to appreciate what they saw in Moses because God doesn't choose everybody to go lead. He chose one guy. And so everybody's blessed now when they followed Moses. Same thing with Gideon. They see God use Gideon in a miraculous way and they're like, dude, God's moving in your life. Let's all rally behind Gideon. And our principle is acknowledge who God is using in your life for good and go with them. Stop following losers. Follow godly people. Get godly men and women in your life because you're influenced. Regardless of what you think about yourself, you're influenced by people. So get godly people in your life. Go with the godly and your life will be blessed. While called to lead a war, Gideon doesn't feel qualified to lead as a king and declines for his sons and himself. So this is surprising. Because 3,000 years ago, you know how you got to the top of the food chain? Is you became king. So you know what's surprising? Is when all the people go, hey, why don't you be our king? And for a guy, it's almost impossible for a guy to go, oh no, don't give me total power. I mean, really, I don't really want that. I don't really want to just say it and it happens. Man, I'd rather not. Like, you know what? High five to you, Gideon, wherever you're at in heaven, because this is a stud. This is a stud who goes, hey, you know what? God called me to lead a war. I don't really feel called to be king. And we don't even know why he said no. Because everybody's like, hey, be our king. Like, you get to make the rules, son. And he's like, no, I'm not going to do it. But one of the reasons, and I put it in your notes, possibly feeling disqualified because of his many wives, or maybe his character issues that he knew he had, Gideon reiterates the rule of God in all of people's lives and is blessed by God. So here, let me break something down for you. Ready? Everybody pay attention. You're watching me online. Ready? Don't have more than one wife. Let me help your life. Ready? Every time a guy has multiple wives. So Gideon has 70 sons. That doesn't include his daughters. So literally, Gideon might have had 130 to 140 children that he himself fathered. 130, papes. So you know what that means? That means he probably had 20 or 30 wives at least. So watch this. Every time, in case you're thinking this, you know what? I need a bunch of more wives in my life. That's what I need. Every single time, Abraham, David, Solomon, Gideon, every time a guy multiplies a bunch of wives so he can have a bunch of children. So understand, this isn't just a sexual thing. It's like, if I have a bunch of wealth, I need people to take care of that wealth. So what do? You have a bunch of wives, you can have a bunch of children because there's no bank, there's no police force, there's no governmental system. Nobody's gonna come protect your own stuff. Who's gotta do it? Your boys have gotta do it. So it's not surprising he had a bunch of wives and a bunch of children, but here's the key. When you have more than one wife, you're in for a world of hurt. And every single time in the Old Testament, a guy has more than one wife, it's always a family train wreck. Now that should be obvious, right, to anybody that's married. You're like, you only need one wife in your life. So watch. Guys, let me tell this to you, because guys struggle with this the most. Number one, only have one wife. And number two, give your heart to her, give your life to her, take care of your wife. That's who God has given you to love her, run your home, be a man of God. And the reason I tell you that is this. You may think, oh, I only got one wife, plus it's illegal in the United States. But guess what? You can give your heart to another wife in your mind and in your heart. You can give your heart to another woman in your life. So my encouragement to you is don't do that. Don't give your heart to another woman. Don't give your heart, your life to anybody else. Keep it with your wife, and God will bless you. If you go outside of that, you're in for a world of butt kicking. And Gideon happens here. For some reason, he goes, I shouldn't be king. I got family issues. I got some issues, boom. So I'm gonna go peace out on being king. Good on him though. For whatever reason, he doesn't take total power, which is amazing, especially for a man. It's unbelievable. So Gideon makes a good call here and is blessed. And here's our principle, ready? High quality decisions produce high quality results. Woo! Tweet that, wake the heck up and look at that. You want good things in your life? You're like, I would love God to bless my life. Okay, I can tell you a way. I can give you a pathway to God's blessing. What is it? This principle right here. High quality decisions bring about high quality results. You want high quality results in your life? In other words, God to bless your life, relationally, physically, maybe financially, whatever. The point is, at the end of a decision is the result. A high quality decision brings about high quality results. And this also deals with the people in your sphere of influence. You got godly people, they'll help you walk the path of godliness so that your end result is a high quality result, and God blesses that. Many of us go, I know what I should do, but I'm gonna do this thing. And we go after that thing and we wonder, why isn't God blessing my life? Or why do I feel far from God? Because we haven't been on the path with God and we haven't been with godly people helping us to walk that path. Everybody understand what I'm saying? So, hey, you want high quality results in my life? I would love that. I would love God to bless my life. Awesome. Then make high quality decisions and you'll get high quality results. Students, young people, all the single ladies, listen to what I'm saying. Again, I hammer this all the time, but I want God to bless your life. You have to make high quality decisions about who you date, who's gonna be your mate. You gotta have high godly standards on the front end so that on the back end, you get high quality results. See? Everybody's learning. Hey, you know what, at school, I know it stinks to be doing school probably online or staring at Zoom boxes or whatever. It bites, it's lame, I get it. My encouragement to you is this, study hard, fight through the difficulty and become a better student. Fight through it, study hard. It bites, it's lame, I get it. This is a hard time for everybody. But my encouragement to you is this, you wanna be a better student? You wanna get better grades? You wanna get a better education? You want somebody to pay for your college maybe if you're in high school because you get good grades? Then get good grades now. Don't make excuses. Everybody can make excuses, but not everybody can make results. Everybody's got an excuse. Oh, this thing happened to me, or this is really bad, and blah, blah. Okay, everybody's got something. But make a high quality decision, you'll get a high quality result. That's a fact of living. Number one, Gideon's decision creates blessing. High quality decision will bless you and bless your family and bless other people around you. Number two, Gideon's decision creates disruption. Uh-oh. What did he do? We're gonna find out. We're gonna find out what your boy Gideon did, and he screwed up. He screwed up big. So he makes a really good decision. I don't wanna be king. I want people to follow God. And I don't know if I'm actually that godly of a man to lead people that way, but people want him as their king. So his decision to say, I'm not going to do that, I want God to be honored by a different guy maybe in the future, is godly. God blesses his life. God blesses the whole nation because of Gideon's decision. However, he's going to make a really bad decision here, and this is going to affect people for generations. After emphasizing that God should rule over Israel through the priesthood, like God declared back in the Old Testament, Gideon asked for a contribution from the spoils that the men acquired through their victory. So they just got done with battle. They just got done with war. And because they won, they got to collect all the spoils, all the gold, all the swords, all the people's, robes, all the stuff they had. So because you're a victor, you gather it all up. That's called the spoils of war. You earned that, so to speak, by being victorious. So now Gideon's going to say this, hey, I'm not going to be your king, but you know what I'd appreciate, considering I got 70 sons to fade? Is I'd appreciate all you guys just giving me a free will offering. I'm not forcing you to do it. I just would like that. And he spreads a cloak out on the ground, and the people are so appreciative, they start giving him gold. And people just start piling gold on this blanket. Appreciating that God had used Gideon to bless their lives, the men gladly give to him. Ready? We're going to deal with this principle first. Listen, people of God, blessed by people of God, should bless those people of God. The people of God who are blessed by people of God should bless back those people of God. I'll give you a story. So when I was young, I was probably in elementary. My dad, hardworking guy, so he was a biology teacher during the school year, and during the summer, he was a carpenter. He worked with all kinds of brick and wood and as a contractor. And so I worked with him my whole life. That's where I got my love for science. I got my love for building. I got my love for just like doing stuff with my hands. But he was a hard worker. I mean, this is Minnesota. We're literally right now, it's like 20 below. So it ain't like Temecula where you got up this morning, you're like, oh my gosh, it's 62, kids, get the jackets on. It's like 20 below. And like he had to get up every day and grind it out to make a living in really hard situations for decades. So I looked at my dad, I'm like, he earns his money. No, but he earns his money. And I recognized like when we went to church, he would give some of the money to the church. And I just remember as a kid going, that's weird. Like, why would you give some of the money? Like we're buying like dollar store Captain Crunch. It's not even like real Captain Crunch. Like save some of that money. Let's get some real cereal up in here. So like, why are you giving your money away? And I remember it's a principle he taught me that men of God who are feeding us, we should feed them. We should make sure that their lives are taken care of because there's no reason that a pastor or somebody who's over us should live worse than us. Like we should take care of the men of God who are feeding us from God's word. Like we should recognize the calling of God on somebody and go, I want to take care of that person. And that totally like transformed how I thought about it because I thought, you made that money, spend it on yourself. But man, when the people of God appreciate the people of God who give them godly counsel and godly wisdom, man, they should be honored. And that's what's happening here with Gideon. Gideon's not going, everybody give me some stuff because I went to war. He's going, hey, this is a free will offering, just an appreciation for maybe what God did. I got a lot of mouths to feed, let's just say that. And so if you want to help out, that'd be great. And they give him 40 pounds of gold plus other stuff. So they appreciated what God did through a man of God. And I look at 1 Corinthians 9:13. So it happened all the way through the Old Testament and it goes into the New Testament because I was wondering like how do pastors like get paid or whatever? Like how many of you guys grew up in the 80s? Anybody was a teenager in the 80s and 90s-ish? Where's my old crusty people? Okay, good. All right, good. All us old heads up in here. So I did, right? And those of us that grew up in those times, we're abused in our minds a little bit about like all the kind of televangelists and stuff that went through the 80s and 90s where it's like, God told me to get a gold jet and wear these, sweet, $5,000 $5,000 Armani suit or whatever, right? And we go, and we're used to kind of that kind of abuse of the goodness of God. And so I was always like, really kind of like, man, what does God really want? And, it comes right out of 1 Corinthians 9, 13, and 14. So this is Paul the apostle. And he goes, do you not know that those who are employed in the temple service get their food from the temple? So these are the priests in the Old Testament. And that those who serve at the altar share in the sacrificial offerings. So the offerings of the people to God at the temple and the tabernacle, the priests eat of that. Like, that's how they stay alive. The offerings that people give to God are used by the priests and the pastors to stay alive. And that was in the Old Testament. And in the New Testament, Paul says this in verse 14. In the same way, the Lord commanded that those who proclaim the gospel should get their living by the gospel. So if that's ever been a thing for you, like, I wonder if we're actually supposed to do that. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, if you're in a church that teaches God's word and you know that God is there, make sure you keep facilitating that. Because you know what the worst thing in the world is when God leaves a church. I don't know if you've ever been at a church where you sat in a service and just went, I don't know if I sense even God's here. Because either the pastor screwed up and it hasn't come to light yet because there's some moral problems going on, or they're not teaching the Bible anymore. Because here's what's sad, is you could go to church for decades and God's blessing that church. People are coming, people are getting saved. It's awesome. And then that pastor retires or leaves and the next guy comes in and you kind of go, dude, what happened here? And you sense that God's left the building. There's nothing worse than being at a church where God doesn't even go. So when you're at a place where you're like, dude, God's here, let's make sure we're facilitating the goodness of God. Because that's on us as the people of God to make sure the things of God keep happening. And that's what they're doing here for Gideon. However, so Gideon gets all this gold. So great, feed your family, Gideon. You know what he does? He pulls off idiot number one decision. He takes all the gold, fires up a fire, and melts all the gold down and makes an idol. However, once Gideon collects over 40 pounds of gold, he fashions it into an ephod and puts it up at Ophrah, his hometown. The ephod for a priest was a garment containing the breastplate to inquire of God. So the priest was in contact to God's will. So here's a picture, an illustration of the high priest Aaron. The ephod was his dress, the dressing that he would wear, and so his garments that he's wearing right now. Plus, it was called a breastplate that he would wear around his neck, and it would hang right over his heart, and it had the 12 tribes of Israel on it. And we don't know how, but he was able to discern the will of God when people had questions or problems from that breastplate. So that was going in Bethel when Gideon was alive. So instead of Gideon going, hey, everybody go to the priest to get your stuff answered, he makes his own ephod, which is a way of contacting God by forming an idol. So the people start coming to him as the contact to God, asking this idol to bless their lives. And the idol doesn't even exist. It's made out of gold earrings, for crying out loud. It's not even a thing. Gideon's ephod was likely an idol, so he was seen as the contact to God, though the tabernacle and priest was down south in the city of Bethel. Here's our principle. Men of God can distract people away from God when they don't point people to God. Woo! You know what's scary? Is when, and you're in a church and God has left the building. That's sad. And the other thing that's sad is when a person you trust as a person of God leads people away from God. That's one of the worst things in life. That's happened in my life. I've had a pastor that totally went off the rails. And he dragged a lot of people with him. To this day, there's still spiritual damage in those people's lives from the pastor that I had over me for a lot of years. So what we don't say is, well, then let's not have a pastor. The issue is, go find the right pastor. Go find one that God's blessing. And Gideon here, instead of going, hey, go to the tabernacle and worship God, he goes, hey, come to this idol I made out of gold earrings. And they start to worship this idol. So he makes a decision that actually affects people's spiritual lives. Number one, Gideon's decision creates blessing. There was times in his life, he made the right decision, it blessed him, it blessed the nation. Number 2, Gideon's decision creates disruption. He creates an idol out of this thing for people to come worship, and he makes a really bad call, and it leads to number 3. Israel's decision creates destruction. So the whole nation of Israel now is going to destroy themselves because they go after this idol. Instead of seeking God the way he intended, Israel began to worship the idol, giving it their attention and affection by whoring after it. So I told you to circle that word. What a great like old King James word. They went a whoring after it. And you know what that word is? That word is literally, in the Hebrew, it's fornication. So when you have sexual contact with somebody that's not your spouse, either pre-marriage or during marriage, like adultery, it's the idea of that you've given yourself totally to it. You can't get closer to somebody than when you're in sexual contact with them. Like that's literally as close as you can get to somebody. So when Scripture uses this word, it's not speaking of sexual contact with an idol. What it's saying is this: the people gave themselves to this idol in their emotions, in their desires. Idol, I pray to you, fix this thing in my life, fix my marriage, to give me more money, make more herds for me, whatever. They're giving themselves totally to this idol, and that's what that word means. So if it was physical people, that means sexual contact. If it's spiritual, it means like I give myself to this idol because I believe it's real. Because of this, it became a spiritual snare. And I'm going to lay this out for you. Ready? Write this down, tattoo it on your face, Twitterize it. Ready? Here it is. Your decision will outlast your decision. Woo-hoo! You're like, what does that even mean? I just woke up. I'm gonna tell you. Ready? Your decisions will outlast your decision. What does that mean? That means here's what I'm saying. We live in a culture where our cultural mantra is this: as long as it doesn't hurt anybody else, it's okay for you. Oh, so my decisions only affect me? Yeah, man, as long as it's not hurting anybody else, it's okay for you. Like I can't tell you to not do something as long as it's not hurting anybody else. Our cultural mantra is do whatever you want as long as it doesn't hurt anyone else. You know what's wrong? You know what the problem with that is? Is that's not true. Everything you do affects other people. It's like everybody being in the pool together. Everything that everyone does is affecting other people. You know what I'm talking about if you've ever been in a public pool. So it's not true that I can make a decision that doesn't affect you. It's not true that I make a decision that doesn't affect you. We all affect each other. Your decision, listen to me, especially young people, I'm telling you right now, the decisions you make right now will outlast your decision. Some of the decisions you make will affect your children and your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren. Some of us have had, an alcoholic great-great-grandpa, and his bad decision affected grandpa, that affected our dad, that affects us today. And we have generational dysfunction because nobody stopped it, because nobody made different decisions. They kept making the same bad decision. They kept making the same dysfunctional decision, and now we as kids learned dysfunction. And so now we pass it on to our kids unless we stop the decision and make a new decision. So watch, people's decisions from 100 years ago can affect us today, and they're long dead. Your decisions outlast your decision. Literally, it goes into the future even after you're dead. And that's exactly what happened to Gideon. He made an idol, he dies in this story, and guess what happens? After he's dead, people still worship it for generations. You know what happened on April 15th, 1912? Any historians here that are awake? April 15th, 1912. It was the maiden voyage of the Titanic. If you're not familiar with the Titanic, it was one of the best luxury ships ever built. This is early 1900s. There was 2,500 people on this ship. Some of them the richest people in the world. This was at the middle of the industrial age, where you've got railroad studs on there. You got stock market people. You got all the big boys that were running the early 1900s America were on this ship. And they were coming from England to New York. One of the most luxurious ships ever built for its time. It was huge. It was called unsinkable. You wanna know why it was called unsinkable? Because it had a brand new technology in the bottom of this boat. The bottom of the boat was compartmentalized with watertight seals on the sides, which meant this: if it got poked and water came in, water would only fill up that one compartment and the boat would stay afloat. Because what had not happened yet was gonna happen to the Titanic, which was multiple compartments are gonna tear open at the same time. The unsinkable ship headed out from England to New York. The captain, who was Captain Ed Smith, was one of the best captains on earth. He got the pleasure of running this ship. And with 2,500 people on it, he wanted to make it to New York in a hurry. He wanted to impress everybody that this was one of the best ships ever built. I'm the best captain ever around, and I'm running this thing with some of the richest people. Literally, they're still on like Forbes list today, and they've been dead for 120 years. Well, guess what? He was told not once, not twice, not 3 times, not 4 times, not 5 times. He was warned, that ship was warned 6 times that there was icebergs where they were heading. He didn't slow down. He kept going thinking, this is an unsinkable ship. I'm gonna go right through the iceberg area and we're gonna make it to New York. Well, that night happened to be a moonless night. It was pitch black with only stars, which made it very difficult for the guys that were at the top of that mast. There was a little, that little white thing right there is guys would be inside on the top of this little nest, and they'd be looking out to the horizon to see if they see any abnormalities, like things literally floating in the horizon. It was so dark they couldn't see anything because the moon wasn't out. But that didn't stop Mr. Smith, and he went right through the iceberg field, and a large ice cube sank the unsinkable ship. In the middle of the North Atlantic, the Titanic scraped an iceberg, and in 3 hours, the unsinkable ship dropped 2 miles to the bottom of the North Atlantic where it sits today and took 1,500 people with it. So 1,500 people died because a captain ignored all the warnings and in his pride and arrogance thought he's going to do what he wants to do rather than what he's been warned not to do in wisdom. And 1,500 people, innocent people, lost their lives. Do you know today, there are people living here who lost their grandmothers and grandfathers on the Titanic. They're living today. Literally, the decision of one man affects people as we sit here right now. So here's my thing to you, and let it be a lesson from the Titanic that's sitting at the bottom of the ocean right now. Your decisions that you make now don't just affect here and now and you. They affect the future and others. So make high quality decisions now that honor God, and God will give you high quality results of blessing in the future. Why? Because God loves you. God wants the best for your life. Don't be a Captain Smith. Don't think you're indestructible and you're gonna go off and do whatever. Listen to me. Listen to godly wisdom, listen to godly people, and God will bless your life because you make high quality godly decisions.